Okay, in a nutshell, the the very idea of a congressional bill to save a bunch of old gas stations was not well received. And this is what it was called in the newspapers when people started hearing about us trying to get a bill written. But Senator Pete Domenici of New Mexico, and Congresswoman Heather Wilson of New Mexico, particularly working with us, did write a bill. And that took forever, just to get it written so that it was legally operable, and I would say it took a year just to get the thing written, bouncing ideas back and forth. Then, oh my God, there was so much time. Oh yes, the next step. When you have a congressional bill, and incidentally, you don't have just a congressional bill, you have a congressional bill and a matching bill for the Senate. There has to be two different bills that go through bodies, through the two government bodies. And all of the senators and all of the Congress folks are shown the bill long before it's introduced to Congress. And they throw in their 2 cents worth, and they read it. And of course, a lot of them don't want to take the time to read it. And so, oh yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it. That took 2 years just to get it through that stage of being read by the politicians and throwing their 2 cents worth in, and there were changes made from that input. The next year was just kind of going through the process of getting it to the point where it could be ready to be introduced to Congress. Now, once that was established, once it was ready to be introduced to Congress, and Congress and the Senate, Pete Wilson introduced it to the Senate, Pete Domenici introduced it to the Senate, Heather Wilson to Congress. Once it was introduced, we had to start lobbying big time, because it had been read on the floor of the Senate, on the floor of Congress, and we had to start with all of our friends. Every stop we could pull out, we had to have them writing letters and making phone calls and sending faxes and emails to their senators and congresspeople to try to convince them to vote for this, and the importance of Route 66 and how this can help save an American treasure. That was, a few months. Then it was ready to go on the floor of the Senate and be introduced and voted upon. The Senate passed it quite comfortably. Congress was a big problem, because the Congress is full of people representing comparatively small areas of America. And they are interested in getting reelected. So they're interested in the sewer system in Detroit, and they couldn't care less about Route 66 because it doesn't go through their state, let alone Detroit. So it becomes a battle in Congress. No, a level of negotiation. If you vote for my bill, I'll vote for yours. Very little of it with much logic. And being that Senator Domenici and Congresswoman Wilson were Republicans, and there was a major battle for the budget that year, it became a political football. This $10 million bill is peanuts to the federal government, to Congress. I mean, they spend that in a day. It's no big deal. But it was. They used it as a political football, and on C-SPAN, which we have here, we watched it be introduced. And we watched them fight it. And the silliness of the Democrats, for no reason, just making up stuff to try to keep this from going through because they didn't want to give it to the quote Republicans. They fought on the floor until 11 o'clock at night for 3 days over this silly little bill. And in the meantime, we were all calling, because they'd have a vote, and then it'd be like one shy, and they needed a certain percentage, and then they'd have another vote, and it went on and on. And so we'd get on the phone, and others would get on the phone and call the congressman, and so on. Well, it eventually passed, but just by the hair of its chinny chin chin. And and now that it was passed, every year we have to go, because that doesn't mean that that money is actually allocated and issued. You have to go every year and convince both the Congress and the Senate to re-vote for that, because see, it's to be issued at $1 million a year for 10 years. So every year we have to go to try to get $1 million to have them issue it. Last year they allocated $250,000. So all of that has to be done ends up falling on the cutting room floor. And now, right now, as we speak, we're fighting to try to get it again for this year. Who knows? In the meantime, the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service has developed a little department there where they're implementing the grants, and it's an ongoing hassle, and a big hassle.